Capital Views is sponsored by Northrim Bank, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, ConocoPhillips, and Linden.
Hi, I'm Tim Braden with Legislative Digest, and welcome to Capitol Views. And a special welcome today to Representative Thomas Baker, District 40, a new legislator from way up north. So thanks for joining us, Representative Thomas, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Bradner. I appreciate it. Really glad to have the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, maybe I was hoping maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of where you grew up and your background. And then, asking about the district. I know it's a very large district, but yourself, you grew up in Kotzebue?
Yes, I did. Born and raised in Kotzebue. My family's from there, and we hail from the Northwest Arctic. And my whole family stems from the Upper Kobuk, and then some family from the Deering southern side of the Northwest Arctic. Born and raised in Kotzebue, attended Dartmouth College, received my bachelor's degree in English with a minor in anthropology. From there, went home, got involved in the community after graduation. Uh, from one thing to another, I started my own boxing club to create a new avenue for people to stay active, and so I could continue what I started in college. Got on the city council, and before too long, I was also on the tribal council and some different boards and councils regarding subsistence and village improvement projects. Uh, Most recently, for about the last 5 years, my occupation has been I serve as the lands manager and construction operations manager for Kikik-Tuggerk Inupiaq Corporation, which is my village corporation for the people of Kotzebue. It's our ANCSA Village Corp, the only one in the Northwest Arctic. I also serve as a volunteer firefighter with the Kotzebue Fire Department. I'm a second lieutenant in the Alaska State Defense Force, and in my spare time, I'm a competitive strongman. But more important to all that, since November 13th, since confirmation, I've been the representative for House District 40.
Well, boy, a local boxing club. Where do you guys box up there in Kotzebue? Did you have to build a ring somewhere?
It's mostly boxing training, just showing people the basics, but it would be at the city rec center while it was still open a few years prior to COVID, kind of closing things down.
Boy, that's a good way to kind of let the steam off during the wintertime. And your family was in the aviation business, as I recall.
Yes, so my grandfather, Bob Baker, he came to Alaska after World War II. He wanted to be a bush pilot and became a bush pilot. He is actually the pilot who discovered what is now the Red Dog Mine. He saw there's some discoloration in the Red Dog, what's now the Red Dog Creek. Uh, he was a lay geologist, and so he got some folks from the USGS up there. They confirmed uh, how big of a deposit of lead and zinc it is, and here we are. And that was in I believe, the early 60s, mid 60s, and here we are with the largest producing lead and zinc mine in the world. After he passed, my grandmother continued on with their business. They had started Baker Aviation. She became the first woman in the state of Alaska to own and operate her own aviation business. All my aunts and uncles, my father worked there, and all my cousins and I at some point worked there for the family business. And to this day, my dad still runs the business, doing some charters in the summer.
Well, I've had the pleasure of flying with Baker Aviation years ago, so I know it. Well, Representative Baker, maybe you could describe District 40. I know it's a large district encompassing both the North Slope and the Northwest Arctic, but how far east does it go? And uh, what are some of the major issues for the whole district?
Well, as you mentioned, it does encompass the entire North Slope. It goes all the way to the Canadian border. Uh, on the east side, on the west side, we're right there on the Kotzebue Sound and the Chukchi Sea. Some of the issues that are really facing the district, I would have to say, are, the cost of fuel, the cost of energy. Some of my communities are paying, depending on the day, depending on how cold it is, it may be $18 a gallon for gas and diesel. Some communities don't have the ability to get a barge in, so that forces them to have to fly their fuel in smaller increments, driving the cost up. Not having a deep water port in Kotzebue, which that is in the works, the deep water port project to be installed at Cape Blossom, with the road being built now, with the hopes of lowering the cost of living for the entire region, as well as creating another opportunity for the military, the Coast Guard, whoever it might be, to serve that part of our nation. Other issues would be subsistence management, which is something that I've always been a staunch supporter of. The cost of living, with a gallon of milk being as high as $20, depending on where you're at. And as with anywhere else in the state of Alaska, education, funding, and public safety, and making sure we have safe homes, safe communities.
Well, hopefully the new port would help ease some of that. But what is the maybe you could just mention the status of Cape Blossom? Is it a project that is likely to be funded in the near future? And you
So
mentioned
it,
the road construction.
yes, it has been funded through the STIP, and so we're waiting now for the issues with the STIP from federal highways to be resolved, before the phase 2 of the road. So essentially putting in a bridge at the halfway point, and then the next 6 to 7 miles of road can be laid down. So it's all contingent upon STIP funding, but it is in the STIP and ready to go once the STIP is confirmed that it's there.
How about the port itself? Is it Corps of Engineers project?
It's a project that the community has been working on and off, I want to say over the last 50 years, give or take, with the Corps of Engineers, with different entities. And at this point, it's not clear how it will be built. There's some more economic ideas and options that the community is looking at. And essentially, we're trying to get through building the road so that we can see what the issues will be, so we can build the port that fits the road.
Now you have to be able to get out there before you can really do anything. How I was just curious, how deep would the port be, assuming it's funded and built?
Well, that's part of the funding side of it. Is if it's only 24 feet, 27 feet, which is what some plans say, you can only get a certain level of ships in. You can get barges, you can get some larger vessels, but you couldn't get a Coast Guard cutter in, which is something that Senator Sullivan has always been a proponent of. For that, you might need closer to 50 feet. So that's where the funding issue lies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting, and that obviously is a project of high priority for the district. But Representative Baker, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk, and hopefully we can continue this.
Yeah, thank you. I really, really appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Bradner.